The bright side of addiction is recovery. Hi, everybody. In this edition of Recovery Coast to Coast, we're going to meet two grateful men in long-term recovery. Now, the first one is a guy named Steven, who is involved with an activity organization designed for people in recovery, people who are what he calls sober curious. He's a man in long-term recovery himself, 23 years after lots of consequences in the drinking and using years. He'll tell us all about that as well. We'll also meet Richie. He's been in recovery for 4 years and is a self-proclaimed message carrier via music. He's a musician who shares the joys of recovery with his music. He talks about the many coping skills that he learned in early recovery that still benefit him today. And then later in the podcast, the great legendary actor Dick Van Dyke will stop by again with some thoughts on living from miracle to miracle. I'm Neil Scott, host of Recovery Coast to Coast, and following 15 years of nightly broadcasting on iHeartRadio in Seattle, we now have upgraded to a national podcast, available to anyone at any time, featuring interviews with clinicians and authors, recovering celebrities, everyday people in long-term recovery. Plus, we'll give you some well-vetted resources for individuals, families, and friends who are looking for help. We invite you to enjoy the podcast and to share it with your friends as well. Recovery is an American way of life. And by the way, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a note, if you would, at recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. Let us know your thoughts about our podcast. How can we make it better for you? What are we doing right? Maybe some of the things that we could correct and make a little bit better. Again, recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. And if you perhaps have a thought on a guest you'd like us to chat with, send that information as well. The only requirement is at least 1 year of continuous recovery. Recovery Coast to Coast, supported by Sundown M-Ranch, one of the oldest and most successful treatment programs and most affordable treatment programs in the country. They have successfully treated well over 200,000 adults and adolescents and families over the past 50-plus years. It is where recovery becomes a reality. Now, if you're in recovery and you know someone who's, maybe a family member or a friend, and they ask you to recommend a treatment program for someone they know, how do you react? What do you suggest? I just did a Google search, which indicated there are close to 30,000 residential treatment programs in America, 28,900 to be exact, and growing. And many of them are solid, patient-centered, good, ethical treatment centers that put the patient first. Unfortunately, many are not. Some prey on the desperation of family members. They're in it to make a lot of money. And you don't know where to go, who to turn to, who to believe. There's a lot of flashy advertising that can be deceptive. At Sundown M-Ranch, they continue to put the patient first. Always have, since back in 1968, well over 50 years ago. And first of all, they have an amazing staff that has been together as a care team for a long time with very little staff turnover, and that's important. Secondly, they're a not-for-profit organization. They own their own land, 30 acres, on a beautiful piece of property in central Washington state, right at the mouth of the beautiful Yakima River Canyon. As a result, their rates for treatment are among the lowest in the country. Third, they don't just treat and release. They have a rock-solid continuing care program, which also integrates the patient into their own community following inpatient treatment. They accept most major insurance programs, and if you don't have insurance, they're willing to work with the families to arrange financing. And I always like to tell folks that Sundown is a proud founding member of NAATP. That's the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers, which has a rigid code of ethics, and they are the leaders in the field in terms of treatment. If you get a chance, check out their website, sundown.org. It's where recovery begins. Give them a call. Their first responders are warm, compassionate, and extremely helpful. And, of course, it's all confidential. 1-800-326-7444. Send them an email at info@sundown.org. Let's meet Stephen Vega right now and find out about a program that supports recovery and activities for the sober curious, and find out a little bit about Stephen as well. We're down here in Texas. I come down here every September, except for, of course, last year because of the COVID situation. They did it virtual, but it's always great to see people that I see from year to year, and that they're still on the front lines, and they're still and not only treating addiction, but carrying the recovery message, the positive message that recovery is an American way of life. Steve Vega joining us in this particular segment, Director of Programs at the Dallas Fort Worth chapter of thephoenix.org. We're going to find out about the organization, and we're going to find out about Steve as well. Steve, welcome to Recovery Coast to Coast.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Tell me a little bit first of all about thephoenix.org.
All right, the Phoenix, we're a sober, active movement. We're a nonprofit. We are a grassroots organization, and what we try to do is build community around healthy activities. Everything from CrossFit to rock climbing to mountain biking to art to music. We try to empower people in recovery or allies of people in recovery to create their own events and do some community change on their own in every
That
community
is
that we're
so
in.
needed because a lot of people fear that, oh man, if I get sober, I'm going to lose all my friends, all my activities. I'm not, I'm just going to, well, we are not a glum lot.
Nope. No, we're not.
And there are some, one of the messages in treatment and early recovery is stick with the winners. And the winners are people in recovery. And what can you do in recovery? Well, you've just given some great examples. Is the Phoenix program, the Phoenix.org, a national program?
Yes, you can find us in Florida, New York, New Jersey, California, Texas. We've been in DFW since 2019, and we're launching our Houston and Austin chapter this year in 2021.
When you say launching the chapter, what does that mean? How do you attract people?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we try to find staff who are passionate about building community, and then we reach out to our partner organizations like fitness gyms, yoga studios, and share what we're trying to do, bring healthier lifestyles to people in recovery and trying to live a sober life. And we ask them if they'd like to be a part of it. And a lot of times they say yes, and they volunteer their services and their time and their resources. And then we also go to the recovery communities and ask them if they would like to be leaders in their community around passions that they have. Maybe they've been running for 15 years and they would like to share that
I've been
passion.
running for 17 years. Have not missed a day of running in 17 years.
That is spectacular.
And boy,
Amazing.
am I tired.
No,
No.
If you've been running 17 years, I find that hard to believe.
Yeah.
You get tired.
Yeah. I was out running at 5 this morning, as a matter of fact.
Wow,
But
that's amazing.
I digress. So these are all the activities. How do you let people in the recovery community, in a community, know how to contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you can go to our website, you can look at the different activities. We have virtual live activities 7 days a week, everything from kickboxing workouts to yoga to meditation.
Virtual?
Virtual 7 days a week.
Wow.
Throughout the day, we probably have 5 to 7 free activities. You can plug into people from all across the country, really the world, because we have people international jumping in on these workouts and things. So that's one avenue. We also have community
Are
challenges.
these via Zoom?
Yes, it is. I'm not sure if it's a Zoom platform or not, but it is like a Zoom community.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're able to see everybody, and if you're not comfortable with that, you can turn off your video and
That's right.
participate anyways.
And be anonymous.
Yeah. And then you can also plug in whatever city you're at and see if we have local programs. So if you look into the Dallas Fort Worth area, you'll see at least one activity a day, and on weekends you'll see like 3, 4, or 5 activities a day, and they're all free for anybody. 48 hours sober. That's the only thing we
48
ask.
hours sober. Only going to be 48 hours. And you don't care whether they're in a 12-step program or a faith-based program or their own program for that matter, as long as they're at least 48 hours sober.
Absolutely. We have a lot of people who are just thinking about what does a sober lifestyle look like. So they're kind of sober curious, maybe. And
I'd never heard that term.
so
Sober curious.
yeah. So they 48 hours sober. They come and they can see other people having fun, meeting cool people, living sober lives, and they can be inspired. And that's our whole. We have people who are coming to our activities who don't believe that they don't claim to be in recovery. They just want to live a healthier life. So they decided to quit drinking and quit using drugs. and we're fine with that too.
Wow.
Yeah, we're all in it
How long
together.
have you been involved with the Phoenix program?
Since 2019, I got sober back in '98, and I was in the military at the time. So, and I was at 20 years old, and finding healthy things was as a challenge at that time. The local recovery community there was a little bit older, so and I got involved clinically back in 2009, and I found out about the Phoenix in 2019, and I heard that they're trying to build it across the country. I was like, this is something that's been needed. I am involved in 12-step work, and my heart goes out to that, and I'm fully supportive of that. But whenever I go into a new community, I have to go and look for runners and intentionally network. And it's easier for me because I've been in recovery longer, but it's a little bit harder for the newcomer, to have free activities that anybody can go to right off the bat. Is maybe somebody's coming in, it's early in recovery, and they just love to run. So they can plug into a running group, meet people from AA, CMA, NA, Refuge Recovery, Smart Recovery, different churches, and they can find out all the resources out in their community, and they can thrive.
So you've been in recovery what, 23 years?
23 years,
23
yeah.
years. What brought you into recovery?
Oh, a lot of jail time, and so I think a lot of consequences. I believe I was fortunate from an early age, probably about 14, 13 years old. I started getting picked up by the police and put in 12-step programs. And so I had my first intervention with my friends when I was like 15 years old. Told me, and we were all drinking at the time, and they sat around and told me I drink too much. And
Your friends who were drinking
yeah,
with you
yes,
said you were
yeah,
drinking too
yeah,
much.
yeah. So that could have been a first indication, right?
Duh.
Yeah. So yeah, I did a couple of geographic relocations to Dallas and then to Austin, and then I joined the Navy. And I was thinking the Navy would change my life, and the Navy started raising hell in the Navy. Excuse my language. And
You can
they,
say Navy. It doesn't.
okay.
It's okay.
So they were about to kick me out too, and they gave me a last chance. I had this chief petty officer who found in his heart to stick his neck out there for me, and I've been sober ever since. And that was
Did he
20.
put you into treatment?
Yeah, he put me into treatment, put me in restriction for a while, and I think all those things were good. So that was my second stay at treatment, and that time it worked. Along with plugging into recovery communities.
Where'd you go to treatment?
It was a naval treatment up in Maryland. I was
Hmm.
stationed at Andrews Air Force
I
Base at the
see.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Navy has some good programs.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
counselors they got in
What
there.
What was your first year like?
I think by the time I came in that first year, I was really desperate, and I was scared. I thought I was going to have to be an altar boy the rest of my life. I was 20 years old, and I had been pretty wild up to that point. So, but I was more scared of just uh, letting the family down, and you know um, just stepping on my own toes. So I was terrified that if I didn't hang on to some coattails, I wouldn't be successful. So I did that. Excuse me.
That's okay. I understand.
Yeah. So I found people who were living that sober life, and I listened and I followed them, and
They had what you wanted,
yeah, yeah,
and you were willing to go to any lengths.
yes, yeah.
So it was a new life for you, Steve.
Yeah, it was a new life, and at age 20, and most of the group that I was going to, they're 60s. And my first sober dance, I was doing the electric slide, and I was dancing with 60, 70-year-old ladies, and it was the best party I'd ever been to
Oh my
up
God.
to that point. But yeah, it was difficult finding my place early in recovery. But if you want it, I really believe that, it's out there to get had, and I made a lot of effort going around DC and checking out different meetings. And
What does recovery mean to you today?
oh, I think it's togetherness, being of service. I found the best uh, the best life comes from serving others, and
Mm.
so that's given me everything. Being passionate about what you do, living that healthy life, and trying to be the best person you can be every day.
What's your relationship now with those people that you hung with before?
That's I still am connected. Actually, I have an old high school buddy that is sober now, and he
Oh, he's
almost,
sober.
yeah, he almost lost his life. He's actually at a Phoenix event in Houston right now,
Mm.
so that's pretty exciting to see happen. He almost lost his life, and he's a war vet too, and it's pretty amazing to see that happen. And then I've had friends over the years call me asking me for help and how to get sober, but we still hang out from time to time. But yeah, I grew up in Victoria, Texas, so it was a little kind of remote, smaller town, so I don't get to see some of my old friends as much. Yeah,
What do you say to people who are today where you were 23 years ago? And maybe they've been in and out of treatment. Maybe they've been in and out of the rooms and they can't get it.
don't give up hope. I mean, just because you don't live your best, you don't do everything perfect. None of us do. Don't give up hope. Keep on trying, and it's definitely possible, and it's going to be better than you can ever imagine.
Yeah. I certainly believe the bright side of addiction is recovery. And what you're doing with the Phoenix program exemplifies that. It really does. And you can live your best life and you can keep enhancing your recovery. I've said many times on this program, I don't use the word relapse prevention. I use the term recovery enhancement.
Like that.
I want to know how your recovery is better today, Steve, than it was yesterday. And how is it going to be better tomorrow than it is today? Moving forward, progressive. Addiction is a progressive disease. Recovery should be progressive as well in a positive sense. And and part of that, I mean, yes, there are meetings. Yes, there's counseling. Yes, there's medical things that you have to do. But there are also social things that you have to do.
Absolutely.
There has to be some fun in there. And you're providing an open ballroom where you can come in and play any place, any way you want with friends who are I want to say in the program, but they're in recovery,
Absolutely.
regardless of how they came in.
Yes.
I don't, again, I don't care whether it's AA or NA or sober, smart recovery,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't care the path as long as you've got a path.
Absolutely.
And once you're in there, then you have the program to just have fun. Stick with the winners. They say the only thing you have to change when you get sober is everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I 100%. Like I found the Phoenix when I was already 20 years sober. So I mean, I had a social connection, and I never would have thought at that time the benefits that joining this group that's trying to do all these different things and has all these different ways to be inspired, how it could enhance my life. I started doing a CrossFit workouts, which I was terrified of, and I was maybe a little bit upset because they took some of my runners from my running club. But I started doing it, and the workouts helped my back, and it got me back to running. I lost 30 pounds. I've rappelled at Moab. I've climbed.
Wow.
I've done mountain biking and rock climbing, things I never would have done before. So it's I wouldn't have thought that another program could enhance my life as much as the Phoenix has, and and I truly believe that as long as I can stay open-minded, stay supportive, plugged in, and looking for the next opportunity to be of service and do something good, um, you don't know what's going to happen. So I think that's the key is just staying open-minded,
Yeah.
being of service, and looking for the next opportunity.
And there are a ton of opportunities at thephoenix.org. Please go, please check it out. Uh, I'm sure you'll find something there that you can get involved with, you can have fun with, and it can enhance your recovery. Recovery is as recovery does. Steve, thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Neil Scott. The program is Recovery Coast to Coast. Next up, a fun conversation with Ricky Wall. He's a musician in long term recovery. He combines his two passions, enhancing his own personal recovery and sharing his music. We'll do that in just 30 seconds.
Are you afraid? Afraid of life without drugs and alcohol? There is help and hope at Sundown M Ranch. At Sundown, the focus is on you and your disease. You will learn how to live without depending on drugs and alcohol. Sundown M Ranch is nationally recognized for effective and affordable alcohol and drug treatment programs. Reclaim your life. Replace your fears with hope. Go to www.sundown.org right now to learn more.
Boy, if you love music and you like recovery, you're going to love this guy. Welcome back once again to Recovery Coast to Coast. Great to have you with us. We're taking you down to San Antonio, Texas, the TAP annual conference. It's the 47th annual conference of TAP, the Texas Association of Addiction Professionals, and meeting lots of new folks down here and listening to people's stories and finding out what people do and the creation and the creative and innovative way that people work with clients, both in treatment and post-treatment as well. I ran into a friend of mine who said, you got to talk to Richie. Richie Wall is a musician in recovery, and I said, say no more. When I can combine talking about recovery and music, man, that is in my zone. So Richie said, sure. He's a musician in recovery, and some people carry the message. He takes that to a new level. He is a message carrier via music. And as I always like to say, music speaks louder than words.
Yeah.
It's the only thing the whole world listens to. And, you know, everybody loves music, different kinds of music, but music. Richie, when did you start your music career?
So I started playing music when I was about 9 years old. I remember I got my first Fender Squire Strat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hello.
Cherry red, you know, a little Fender amp. And I remember I'd seen a friend of mine playing in a church worship band, and I saw him playing guitar and soloing, and I was sold at that moment, you know. So I picked up a guitar at about 9, started learning guitar. My dad, bless him, got me a drum set for Christmas a few years later. My mom taught me some piano, and I just love everything about music, and that's...
You were like a one-man band.
I suppose. But I certainly, I do well with others and playing with others and collaborating with others.
He plays well with others.
I do.
In bands and outside of bands too, I would imagine. So are you a songwriter as well?
Yes. Yeah.
When did you write your first song?
I was probably 13 or 14.
It
It was probably a song about a girl I had a crush on in the 9th grade, and you know, heartbreak and these kinds of things. You know how a 13, 14-year-old is.
You're still writing songs today?
I am, yes.
What's your process in writing?
Oh, so it's interesting you ask that, because it's changed so much, and I am in recovery. I'm just about 4 years sober now. For a long time in my addiction, I started really struggling with things like perfectionism, codependency, big expectations. I started really struggling with being more concerned about the result and the product rather than
the process.
The process and the creation. And since I've gotten sober and learned all these really helpful coping skills, you know, presence, mindfulness, spirituality, trusting your higher power, trusting others, other musicians, I've been able to get back to a place where I'm much more mindful and present when I'm creating and living in the moment while creation is happening, rather than being so focused on what this song is going to be and what it's going to turn into and will people like it, and more about like, hey, we're creating right now. This is like this is a spiritual experience, you know, and I'm trying to channel something through myself, you know, rather than getting so caught up in things like fame or, you know, how people will perceive it.
Tell me about the using years.
For sure. So I started drinking pretty heavily, probably in around 2009, and that was an up and down fiasco up until about 2015. I went to my first treatment.
How old were you when you started drinking?
I mean, probably when I was like 20, but my addiction really took off when I was about 24, 25. And then it was from about 25 till 30, just heavy
off
drinking,
to the races.
Off to the races every day.
Yeah. Did you get in a lot of trouble?
I didn't actually. Maybe with my parents. I was a very isolated user. I lived in my mom's basement for several years, and you know, so I got in some trouble with her, and you know, a lot of pain and just in our relationship. But I kept to myself most of the time. I was very isolated, just away from the world, cut off.
When did you realize that alcohol had taken control of your life?
It was probably in 2012, 2013. I remember going to my first detox. I wasn't in a place to truly admit that I had a problem, but I knew something. Just, I was in a detox, and I was like, this
Well,
isn't.
who put you there? Who sent you there?
Probably the first time, it was literally a matter of my health.
Your mom?
Well, my mom played a part in it for sure, bless her. But I was literally getting shakes, and I was like, I have to go to the hospital. I can't keep this up. So my thought at the time was, I'll go to detox, I'll get it out of my system. I'll wait a month or two and then resume, go back to it.
A social drinker.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and we, a lot of us know how that often goes. So, within a couple months, I was back at it, and same pattern. Exact same pattern.
So you did go to detox, and you did start drinking again.
I did.
What was your mindset then? Did you realize, I need something else?
You mean other than alcohol, or?
No, I need something else in terms of treatment,
Sure.
or the rooms or whatever.
So I'll tell you, from about 2012 to 2015, it was a lot of very slow steps, a lot of resistance. I was very resistant to anything like AA or treatment or therapy. I believed that I could do it on my own for a very long time.
And you were not that bad yet.
And I wasn't that bad yet, but I was. Reflecting back, I was.
When did you realize that?
So for me, my true rock bottom moment of clarity, I suppose, came in 2017. I had made a decision to move into an apartment on my own against better judgment from those around me. I thought that somehow would, in my crazy brain, I thought that just being in my own apartment, living my life, playing music with a bandmate in Cleveland, Ohio, I thought somehow that would make it all better. And what ended up happening is I continued to get more and more isolated from the world. I had made this decision that I wasn't going to be involved with anyone in recovery. And I just remember being in this apartment in Cleveland, and wasn't working any type of program, wasn't connected spiritually in any way, completely depressed. This is the first time in my life I started experiencing thoughts of suicidal ideation. And those thoughts became so overwhelming. I didn't know who to talk to about it. I was completely cut off, and I was in my apartment, chain smoking, pacing back and forth for several days at a time. And finally I called my mom and I said, I need help. Can you help me find somewhere to go? And that was the first time I had really made the decision that I wanted to do something for myself.
So did you go to treatment again?
I did.
Mm-hmm. Where'd you go?
So I went to Recovery Unplugged in Austin, Texas.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that program.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah. And how did you select that program? Because of your musical interests?
So it's funny because at that point
you were living in Cleveland, for goodness sakes. How did you find out about Recovery Unplugged in Austin?
So it's funny because my mom, when I made the call to my mom, I need help, can you help me find a place? She knew I'd been to treatment 3 times before, more conventional style treatments, and she was like, why don't you try something different? And she actually started researching music-based treatment,
Nice.
And
thank you, Mom.
Yeah, right. And so she hit on Recovery Unplugged. I saw it. I went to the website, saw the treatment model, and I was like, this sounds really cool. Let's give it a try. And the next day I was on a plane to Austin, Texas.
Wow. And you've been sober since?
I have.
My goodness. Talk about that first year when things really started changing following you getting out of Recovery Unplugged.
For sure.
So, you don't get out of, they have a continuing care program, obviously.
Yes.
People get so mixed up when they think about treatment. They think, well, it's just 30 days and then I'll be fine. I won't drink anymore and life will go on.
Yep.
Not the case. It is a lifelong process. And just as your alcoholism was progressive in a negative sense, your recovery should be progressive in a positive sense.
Absolutely.
And recover. You don't get well in 30 days,
No,
as
no.
you know.
No, and it continues to be this
Of course
this
it does.
this process. But no, for me, so I went to treatment. I did about 45 days inpatient, and then Recovery Unplugged had a great outpatient program. I did IOP, transitioned to an OP program. I did sober living the whole time. But for me, the contrast between getting to treatment and then continuing on in my sobriety, it had everything to do with community. That played a massive role for me because I was such an isolated user, and connecting with people that understood me and that I was able to get vulnerable with, especially in a music rehab where I met other musicians. We all had stories of screwing over our bands, and we were like,
of course, yeah,
I stole a guitar too, and
birds of a feather,
Yeah. So community played a huge role, and spirituality was a huge component. And for me, it was the first time I had finally been willing to throw my hands up and say, I'll do whatever. I was willing. I really struggled with the God piece of AA and just spirituality in general. But this time in treatment, I was just willing to be open to other perspectives. And as I did that, I started encountering things.
And you grew.
And I grew. I grew.
Did you play music all along this path?
Yes. And again, so it's interesting. I was telling you a little bit before about, with me as a musician and getting into this very toxic habit of writing music with expectations or with the hope of people would like it or something. Yeah. That was prior to coming to treatment. I was like working on an EP, and I've never actually finished that. But then I got into treatment. I met several people who are now currently bandmates of mine. We all met in treatment, which is super cool.
What's the name of your band?
It's Nolo. Nolo. Nolo the band.
Nolo the band.
Yeah.
All right.
So we still play music today together. But anyway, when I met these individuals in treatment, I was just at a point where I was like, I want to start over. Let's hit the reset button and try and approach life with a fresh slate. And so I met these amazing musicians. We started playing music together. I started incorporating principles that I was learning in treatment and in recovery to the way we were approaching music. Things like open-mindedness, willingness, honesty. Practicing real authenticity in our music. What do you know? Like, we started writing songs that I was like, oh, I'm actually really happy with how this is going. And I wasn't so hell-bent on thinking about the end result or how it was going to be perceived, but rather just the enjoyment of the process and connecting with others. In the moment. Exactly.
So now you're taking that music into other treatment centers.
Yes.
Tell me how that emerged.
Absolutely. So, I have definitely have to shout out Recovery Unplugged for, kind of planting this idea of music being medicine. Today what that looks like for us, I work with my bandmates. We all work together. We're all sober. We all go to different treatment centers, sometimes as a duo, sometimes as a full band.
Are you invited in? Do you call them and say, we'd like to come and do a concert? What does that look like?
Yeah, so sometimes it's like, knocking on doors, cold calling. In other cases, we have amazing people we've connected with along the way that, through word of mouth, and all of a sudden we get a call. And sometimes music is the only medicine the heart and soul need.
Isn't that something?
I mean,
as you were saying this, what I'm doing, obviously you can't see this on your radio, and if you can see it, then you need some psychiatric help. But this is a meme that I found online, and it's a prescription bottle. It says music on it. It's tipped over, and there's notes coming out, and it says sometimes music is the only medicine the heart and soul need. So you go into treatment centers and tell me what you do.
So a couple different things that we do when we go to treatment centers. Sometimes we'll just do live performance, and sometimes that'll look like cover songs ranging from the 60s to today. We do like live music meditation groups where we create music on the spot with like loop pedals and and crazy ambient delay pedals and stuff, and lead music meditation. But one of the really exciting groups that we do that I'm a big fan of is a songwriting group, where we actually get clients involved in terms of expressing themselves and being creative on their own, and really empowering clients to get involved, whether it's playing a guitar, hitting drums, writing something, rapping it.
What have you
singing it.
discovered in doing this, Richie?
Yeah, well, the first piece is that, just to your meme that you showed me, music is truly, in my opinion, I think it's the best medicine. Here's what I'll say, just to give some context. I know for me, in my isolation of my addiction, the one thing I always had was music. And I spent a lot of time in my car. I still spend a lot of time in my car today listening to music, driving around listening to music. But in my addiction, I often found myself, I'd be drinking, I'd be alone, but I had music. And there were so many times where songs that hold meaning to me, I felt heard, I felt understood, I felt a power in the rhythm or the chord progressions. And somehow that made me feel just understood, And so what I've found doing these groups today is that clients and friends, they feel very similar. That music it's relatable. It makes you feel, for me, it makes me feel understood. It's that one thing where words fail, music has that power to express and
Absolutely.
and symbolize what we're feeling.
Let me ask you this. A lot of people in early recovery find real slippery places. Musicians who get sober and they're playing in a bar setting or a place where there's alcohol, and it's kind of like, oh, I really shouldn't be here. It just triggers things.
Sure.
Are there songs that trigger you? I mean, a lot of the songs that obviously you know and love can be traced back to when you were isolated and drunk.
Sure.
Can music be a slippery place?
It's really interesting you say that, and one of the things with music is the nostalgia component of it. I have songs that take me back to high school.
And back to that 13-year-old girl.
Exactly. And then there are songs that remind me of being in my car drinking and getting wasted. It's been an interesting experience learning how to reframe my relationship with some of those songs, and seeing there's a beauty in going back to some of that music that I used to use or drink to, and seeing like that was me at my darkest. But I also look back and I hear those songs today and I'm like, that was the beginning of change.
You can put it in a new frame.
Exactly. And that's part of, for me at least, that's how I've been able to heal my relationship to some of that music. And today it just feels like that was part of my story.
What do the treatment center administrators think of your process? Do they like what you're doing? What is the feedback?
100%. What I've found, I mean, clients are stoked, to get to hear live music, to use music as a coping skill, to enjoy it.
Some treatment programs have equine therapy.
Yeah.
Summer Sky has goat yoga.
Yeah.
All these different things that for different people.
Yeah.
But the music therapy, to me, seems like it could touch anyone.
Absolutely. And, one of the groups we do, I just wanted to say this about our songwriting group, where music can be on its own, this coping skill, just on its own, listening to music to feel better, to feel something. The cool thing about the songwriting group is clients get the chance to, or what's important to us is empowering clients to be creative, to be authentic, to tap into themselves and what they're feeling. We get really positive response doing that.
And do you still play as a local band around town?
Yes.
Wow.
And so that's the other piece of it's like
called
dual-sided.
Balance.
Yes.
It's called Balance.
So there's our own creative side, which is our band Nolo.
Yeah.
And then there's our side where we go into treatment centers and use music as a tool to help.
Nice. Well, I think it's amazing, and I love it. And again, every time a musician is in recovery, there's a synergy that happens that's almost unexplainable.
Yeah.
And I applaud you. And I always say the bright side of addiction is recovery. You certainly embody that. And I thank you for what you're doing. And I hope you continue to send and carry that message of music and of hope and recovery. Thank you, Richie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Two miracles in recovery, Richie Wall and Stephen Vega. And speaking of miracles in recovery, of which there are many, here's my old friend Dick Van Dyke with some thoughts on living from miracle to miracle.
To be alive, to be able to see, to walk, to have houses, music, paintings, it's all a miracle. I have adopted the technique of living life from miracle to miracle. Arthur Rubinstein. There was a time in my life when I would scoff at the very idea of miracles. Which is not to say that on certain occasions I didn't hope desperately that something miraculous would come to pass. If I could get rid of my hangover by taking a few drinks without getting drunk all over again, that would have been a miracle. If I could only get bailed out, get to the airport on time, make my deadline, that would be a miracle. Out of the true miracle of my sobriety today flows a host of other miracles. I am the same person I was back then, to be sure, but I feel far differently about myself. My self-loathing has been replaced with a sense of self-respect and usefulness. There are days when I am literally astonished to be alive. When I think back to the constantly perilous existence I led and to the times I was close to death, I am filled with gratitude just to be breathing, let alone to have physical and mental capabilities. Today, I am aware that all of this has come to pass only because of the power and grace of God. That awareness for me is perhaps the greatest miracle of all. Thought for today: expect a miracle, accept a miracle.
Well, that wraps up this edition of the national podcast, Recovery Coast to Coast. If you've enjoyed the podcast, we would love to hear from you. Recovery Coast to Coast at Comcast.net is our email. If you'd like to help us out and expand our podcast to others, there are a few things that you can do to help. First of all, please hit the subscribe or follow button. It's free, and you'll be notified the next time we publish a podcast. Secondly, send me that email. I'd love to hear from you. Again, Recovery Coast to Coast at Comcast.net. Perhaps you'd like to suggest a topic or a guest with a minimum of 1 year in continuous recovery. Would like to carry the message of hope by sharing a story of experience, strength, and hope. And third, write a review of our podcast and let us know what you like and what you don't like. We try to make it better each time. And join us next time for America's Voice for Recovery, Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast. And remember, if you know someone who's experiencing problems with alcohol or any other drug, here's a 24-hour national helpline that offers free information and confidential treatment referrals. Spanish-speaking individuals available as well. 1-800-622-HELP. And another shout-out to our sponsoring organization, the good folks at Sundown M Ranch. They've been with us since the beginning, successfully treating individuals, including adolescents and their families. I'm Neil Scott, reminding you to stay healthy, live in gratitude, and be kind to others. Remember, the bright side of addiction is recovery. Pass it on.